Hello, everybody. How y'all doing today? If you saw my tweet from a couple hours ago, today is a very, very bad day pain-wise. My hip is trying to kill me, and it runs down my leg. So I'm going to do my best to get my analysis out in the video, and I'm doing it early because I prepared both slates, so I want to be able to talk about everything. I might have to do medicine interspersed, though, which I try to avoid doing, but I really can't avoid it today. So I'm going to get down to it, and I'm going to, do what I normally do and ask any questions that you have. I'm going to plug through this as best I can. So first up, I want to talk about weather. Weather is going to play a role today. I will get to those games later, but basically the Mid-Atlantic tonight is going to be in a lot of trouble. It's going to be around Cincinnati. What I would think happens looking at the hourly forecast, I spent some time looking at those before I came on. It looks like it's going to be dry by the time the game goes off, by the time we got first pitch. And then it should stay dry for a couple of hours. Regardless, I think that they should be able to get a full game in. So we shouldn't have to worry about the hitters here, and that's the only people that we should want to play in this two-game. For these two pitchers and these two teams. Brault and DeSclafani have been really, really bad lately. DeSclafani over the last couple of weeks has an FIP of 12.9, which is, that just shows you how bad he's been. Hey Grace, how's it going? I'm in a lot of pain today. Today's a really, really bad day. There's nothing much I can do about that, unfortunately. I just have to, push through it as best I can, like I always do. It's just a little harder today. Stephen Brault, no, I don't take a day off. The MLB DFS, this stuff doesn't take a day off. I don't take a day off. I'll do what I can. I'll get by. So we have Brault going for the Pirates. If you look at, I talk a lot about climbing the ladder, which is a term, as far as I know, I came up with. And what I refer to there is if you look at the advanced stats, if you go from ERA to FIP to XFIP to Sierra, ideally they should all be around the same, and that should be at least under 4 for our purposes, lower preferably. If you have the ERA and then the FIP is higher than that, and then the XFIP is higher than the FIP, and then the Sierra is higher than the XFIP, we have what I call climbing the stairs, and that is an incredibly accurate indication that someone has been pitching or been lucky, I should say. They've been getting better stats than they deserve. So while you may look and say this hasn't been a terrible group of outings for this guy, the underlying stats should concern you. So with Brault, we have the ERA of 4, which isn't terrible, especially for his price. But the FIP is 4.78, which is a lot more concerning. Then you have the XFIP is all the way up to 7.11. And the Sierra is 7.45. So what we have here is two really, really cold pitchers going. And I talked about this briefly yesterday, so I want to talk about it briefly today as well. If you look at the lineup page on Bathrobe Sports, bathrobesports.com/lineups, I'm going to post it in the chat on the YouTubes here. I don't know if that will link effectively or not, or whatever. Someone else can do it. I don't know. Maybe I have to do the HTTP thing with the slashes and the who what now. I'm not, this is all stupid stuff, but I want people to be able to go here. So there we go. Okay. I put a lot of care into this lineups page. I think it is the best in the industry, and it's free, and I plan to keep it that way, and there will continuously be more information provided. But two of the things that are significant that I have that no one else has is the splits and the color coding of who's hot and who's cold recently. So one of the things that we should think about or we should do when we're thinking about what stacks to play, before we dive into anything, I like to look at who's hot and who's cold as a team. So if we are scrolling through all the games today and we see a team that has a bunch of green highlighted people and nobody that is whatever that purple color is, they are a team that we should consider because everybody on that team has been hitting at least decently, but a significant amount of them have been hitting well. So what we have here, if we dive into it on this early slate, is two really, really bad pitchers in DeSclafani and Brault. Well, DeSclafani's not a bad pitcher, but he's been pitching really bad lately. And then we have a lot of hot players with zero cold players on either of these teams. So on the Cincinnati Reds and the Pirates, both these have been confirmed. We have Suarez, Iglesias batting third, which is fantastic. I have a feeling this is not correct. There we go. I have to do that every time, I guess. So I'm sorry. I set up, or Kyle helped me set up this automation yesterday for the pricing and the position. So I think I have to like cut and paste it every time because it keeps messing up. But I'll figure that out another time. The point is, Iglesias is 3,700 on DK, 2,400 on FanDuel, on a tough position of shortstop to fill. He has been on fire recently, including that grand slam that he got. And he's just in a fantastic spot against the lefty of Brault. He's an extreme normal splits hitter, which means he really does well against lefties. And Brault is a lefty that is an extreme normal splits pitcher, which means he does really badly against righty hitters. So we have Suarez, a righty with extreme normal splits, who's hot. Iglesias, a righty with extreme normal splits, who's hot. And Casali, the catcher, who with extreme normal splits, who's very hot lately. I would strongly consider taking all three of those, at least as a mini stack, especially for the pricing. And then on the Pirates, and I also should point out that Dietrich and Winker are also very, very hot lately. Hey, Trunks, how you doing today? So if you want to take some lefty-on-lefty action, knowing that they're going to get some easy bullpen matchups later, Dietrich is about as hot as it gets. He has changed his swing, and that dude is hitting for power this year like no one would have expected. I really don't expect this to change. There is nothing in what I have watched or any of the underlying stats that indicate that this is going to change. I don't see any holes that he's letting them exploit. So, I'm all in on the Dietrich train. 4,900 on DK is a little much, but 2,900 on FanDuel is drastically underpriced. Basically, if you're playing FanDuel, I probably want to get 4 Reds because of the pricing. And then I can spend up on pitching and still have what I consider one of the best stacks going today. On the Pirates, we also have 4 guys that are hot. The lineup that they put out is different than the one that I projected for a couple of reasons. And it's better this way for the Pirates. Reynolds, batting second now, has been really hot lately. Marte and Bell have been fantastic, but we know Bell's been playing like an MVP. And then Kevin Newman batting eighth. Dual position eligibility has also been absolutely on fire lately. All 4 of those guys have OPSs over 1,000 with WOBAs over 400. So again, we have a bad pitcher in DeSclafani, or a poorly performing pitcher in DeSclafani, going against 4 hot Pirates, and they're 4 hot Pirates, and there are absolutely 0 players or 0 batters confirmed in these lineups today that have been cold recently. So even if you don't want to take the hotter guys that, as I have listed them or color coded them on the lineups page that I linked for you, any of these guys are legitimate for the price or for their projections. You really can play anybody in this game bat-wise, and I am a huge fan of that. Again, both of these pitchers have been doing really, really poorly. Next up is Padres and Yankees. We have Chris Paddock against James Paxton here. Paxton's going to be limited coming off the IL, and he's 10-7 on DraftKings and 9,900 on FanDuel. So there's no way we're going to be able to play him at that price getting limited minutes. If he was like 2,000 cheaper, I can understand taking the chance, but at that pricing, there's no way. On top of that, if you look at the Padres team, almost the entire team is hot right now, with the exception of Margot, but he's going to be batting ninth, so we can avoid him anyway. The Padres also did really well in terms of their lineup construction for a couple of reasons. They're hot hitters. The Padres are really good at this in general. They are super annoying for me. As someone who does projected lineups every day and tries to get it out, because they change it up so frequently. You have them moving people up and down based on matchup, based on batter versus pitcher information, based on who's hot and who's not. So today we have a Padres lineup that is a really good lineup for hitting against Paxton. We have Myers leading off today, who's been at the bottom of the lineup, but he's been absolutely fantastic. Reyes and Machado have been okay, but Hosmer, Renfroe, France, Kinsler, and Hedges, the 4 through 8, have all been hot. And again, hot means the OPS of 1,000 or over and the WOBA of 400 and over the last week. So while, I will say a couple things about this. I am not as big a fan of the Padres stack as I would be of other stacks for good reason. First, while Paxton is going to be limited, he is still a fantastic pitcher. And the Yankees do have one of the best bullpens in baseball. So, even if they get Paxton out of there early, while they might have some success against a weaker long reliever coming out of the bullpen, once they get into the back end of the bullpen, they should be able to shut it down. So for that reason, while, the Padres are really, really underpriced, Will Myers, 3,900, and on DK, 2,900, excuse me, on FanDuel leading off. Excuse me. Ow. Leading off is pretty ridiculous. Ty France batting 6th for 2,200 on FanDuel. Also pretty ridiculous, but again, bats against James Paxton is not normally something that I am looking to target. On the other side, with Chris Paddock pitching, Paddock is a fantastic pitcher. He would probably be, given how weak this slate is, I think Paddock is overall the top pitcher on the slate today. He's been performing, in a decent fashion. He hasn't been hot. He hasn't been cold. If you go into the numbers over the last couple of weeks, where is he hiding here? There it is. 8.5 strikeouts per 9 with a 0.8 walks per 9, which is great. 1.03 whip, which I'll take. 3.38 ERA with a 4.52 whip, 3.87 xFIP, and 3.74 SIERA. So while the FIP is a little high, the other underlying stats say that, it's not luck. He's just a good pitcher who's been pitching well. If anything, I think the amount of strikeouts being only 8.5 strikeouts per 9 is surprising. And against, a Yankees team with Kendrys Morales batting 3rd and a few players getting off today, I like him even more. If you look at the projected Yankees lineup versus the lineup they actually played, no Aaron Hicks, no Gary Sanchez, it's LeMahieu to Voit to Morales, who's been terrible. Torres, then Gardner, who's been batting 9th because, that's where he fits best, is batting 5th. Cameron Maybin, who strikes out all the time, is batting 8th. So, while this is a Yankees team that, like the Dodgers, like the Red Sox, like the Astros, you can really almost always play in a GPP. Like the bats are that good. I don't think it's crazy to ever just take a chance on a fantastic offense when they're going to be under-owned regardless of who the opponent is, because we see them go off all the time. And people are like, oh, man, why wasn't anybody on the Yankees today when there was only 4 games? It's just the way it goes. Paddock is a good pitcher. A lot of people are going to be playing him. I would expect he's the highest owned pitcher on this small slate. So, a good way of getting contrarian is taking a really good Yankees offense against a really good pitcher and hope that they are the one that wins out. I will point out that if you are looking for who's hot on the Yankees, Frazier has been absolutely on fire lately. I wouldn't mind taking him as a one-off, regardless of if you're playing Paddock or not. I've talked about this before as well. One of the ways that's effective in separating yourself from the field on really short slates is by allowing yourself to take up, a batter, maybe two batters from a team that's going against one of the pitchers you're pitching. Most people have rules set up in their optimizers or whatever that will make it that, so that the lineups that get built for them will not have any opposing batters going against pitchers. So it's a good way to separate yourself, especially considering that, Paddock can still go 7 innings, give up 2 hits. And if those 2 hits are like 2 home runs to Clint Frazier, both dudes are going to pay off. Granted, that's, an extreme scenario, but it's not something that we haven't seen before. It's not something really, it'll happen every few months, maybe a few times a season. So while you can't bank on it, on a small slate, it's worth taking the chance on because it allows you to separate yourself from the field and maximize the potential points you're going to get, especially when someone's hot and you would want to play them normally, but you wouldn't on a larger slate because it's harder to set that rule up. Next up, we have the Angels and the A's. I don't believe these lineups have come out yet. Let me double check. Yep, no, none of the lineups in the 3:30 games have come out. So I'm going to do my best to assume here. One thing I want to check if there's any news on, Mikey Trout, who's questionable today. If it looks like he's not going to play, obviously that is going to be significant. They still haven't updated. He's still going to be quote unquote testing things out early. So I'm expecting that'll, the Angels will be the last lineup. Generally what happens, like with basketball, anytime you have a questionable Trout, they'll just hold off on putting the lineup out until the last minute, until they know for sure that he can or cannot play. So Trout and his status is obviously, it doesn't take an analyst to tell you that the status of Mike Trout is going to be incredibly significant today. This is an Angels team that at best flounders without him. Cozart isn't going to play. He's going on the IL. So they are going to be, lacking in bats to a degree. If they fill in Sam Simmons on the DL as well, or IL as well. So, they're going to have to fill in if Trout's gone with a worse than replacement level player. So while it's not a fantastic play, while I don't think anyone is going to say it's one of the safest plays, I think that if Trout is out, Daniel Mengden is a really decent shot at 7,300. He showed you against Detroit 2 starts ago. He got about 25 DKP in that start. He was 7,700 then. If he does that at 7,300 now, that's more than 3 times what you pay for him, which is fantastic value for a pitcher. I would have no problem doing that. And he did that against Detroit, who, the Angels without Mike Trout is very similar to the Detroit lineup. They don't have many hot hitters right now. Most of the people are on the border of cold, although the only cold guy, officially, by the way, I rank it and do the stats, is Ohtani. So basically we have to wait and see what the status of Mike Trout is, because that is going to be really, really significant. He, what's the right word? He extends that lineup, if you know what I mean. Like it makes it harder to pitch through everything because he's there. The lineup is a lot shorter and a lot easier to work around when Trout is out of it. So Mengden is a crafty enough pitcher, low strikeout upside, but enough strikeout upside that at 7,300 on a 4-game slate, I would absolutely consider him. So that's the one really significant thing that we have to consider, and that would push Mengden into viability. Although, I don't think anyone is going to say like, "Oh boy, Daniel Mengden's like my favorite pitcher of all time." I'm just a big fan of bad mustaches. On the other side, we have Griffin Canning, who, if you go by the recent stats, is the only hot pitcher, or the pitcher that's been hot recently over the last couple of weeks. If you dig into the numbers, as I always like to do, it hasn't even been, that fantastic. A 7.5 strikeouts per nine, 2.3 walks per nine. Both of those are mediocre. What we have is luck here. With his batting average against is 143 with the BABIP against of 161, which is why the WHIP is 0.75. His left on base percentage, or the amount of runners left on base, is 100%, which is also, somewhat fluky. And you could see that when you go into the advanced stats. The ERA is 0.75, which is very, very impressive. But as you know, ERA doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, and is really affected by luck and a lot of other factors. So FIP is 3.53, which is almost a full 3-run boost to his ERA. And then his XFIP is 4.67. So there's a 4-run gap between his ERA and his XFIP, and that is significant. Canning is a really high-touted prospect, and he's 8,300 on DraftKings and 7,800. So if you are looking for that mid-priced pitcher, and Trout is playing, then I don't think you really have any other choice but to take a chance on Griffin Canning. I will say that this is a good A's team. They have a few really hot hitters. I will say this, though. Piscotty is a righty that does better against lefties. Canna is a righty who's a lefty masher. And Hundley is, been hitting well, but I don't think anyone's going to say Nick Hundley is one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. So 3 of the 4 hot hitters for Oakland aren't necessarily at a huge advantage in terms of how they naturally hit against a Griffin Canning. So if the prospect is on, I would expect his K9 to be slightly lower than 7.5. The A's just don't strike out that much. But I still expect him to put up a serviceable start. When you have four games on a slate, you can't be as picky as you would like. If this were a full slate, I would have a lot more trouble trusting Canning today. But, again, 4 games with Paxton being limited, 2 terrible pitchers with Broughton, DeSclafani so far, Mengden possibly facing Trout and not being that great otherwise. Again, we are at slim pickings. So let's move on to the last game. And again, we can see just how slim of the pickings are. We have a matchup of, I'm assuming that Leclerc is going to start, and then Smiley is going to come in as the opener, whatever the hell they want to call it, the starter. I'm going to call it the opener and the starter because who gives a shit anymore? I assume Leclerc is opening and then Smiley is the starter. But regardless, Smiley has been absolutely terrible lately. So he's not someone that I would really focus on playing today. 7,600. I would rather just pay up for Canning that 600. It's not like he's significantly cheaper based on how poorly he's been pitching. The 7.2 strikeouts per nine, not great. 7.2 walks per nine is like the worst on the slate by far. I think Brault is at 7 and no one else is even in the 6s. So that's just absolutely abysmal. A 1.6 whip, and he's been getting lucky in terms of his batted balls. So we see not necessarily climbing the stairs, but it's close. The 4.5 ERA with a 6.5 FIP, 6.4 XFIP, and a 6.4 Sierra. So Smiley is someone who is already a terrible pitcher. I don't think anyone's going to argue about that. So there's not enough upside. He just doesn't strike out enough people. And while they have been floundering lately, this is not a Mariners team that I think is as bad an offense as people would imagine. I will say that lefties do get a boost to the Mariners. They are a lefty-heavy lineup, but again, I don't think that trusting Drew Smyly is the way to go today. Obviously, if you're playing 150 lineups, I would do it via exposure. I would have exposure to all 8 of the pitchers because you're playing 150 lineups, right? But I would set the exposure to the really bad pitchers. So both pitchers for Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, both pitchers for Texas and Seattle. I would set the exposure there significantly lower than the exposures to like a Paddock or anybody else. So I wouldn't be surprised if even you get Paxton getting 3-4 innings and outscoring more than half of the pitchers on the slate. So again, you can't pay the price for him. It'll leave you floundering for bats because there aren't really other pitching options. But I'm just saying, like, the pitching on this early slate is absolutely abysmal. So don't get desperate and take a chance on really bad pitchers just because they're cheap. It's just not going to be worth it. Try to lock in the safest bets you can and then build around the bats today, especially, like I said, with Cincinnati looking so fantastic over the last stretch of games. And they should be relatively under-owned, and they're relatively cheap as well. So, yeah, what I would do, I wouldn't mind focusing at all on the Seattle bats. I wish we had an official lineup, but we have Haniger 4,400 on DK, way too cheap. Kyle Seager's been hot lately. He should be batting second, even against a lefty. 3,700 and 3,200, way too cheap. I'm going to avoid Encarnacion because he's been about as cold as anything lately, and he's too streaky to play him when he's cold. But Domingo Santana's been really hot lately. He gets the righty on lefty matchup. 4,500 and 3,700. Again, far, far too cheap. Vogelback, no one's going to play him because a lefty on lefty. He's 5,300, but he's a fantastic play. Beckham has been doing well lately, 3,800. Tom Murphy should be catching 3,300. He's been doing well. There's just a huge number of Mariners who haven't been bad, but have been decent, if not hot, against a really bad pitcher with a really significant run total. So I think that while I don't like them as much as the Pittsburgh or Cincinnati bats, Cincinnati is going to be my favorite stack on this short slate. Mariners are going to be right up there. I really do like them a lot. On the other side, we have Wade LeBlanc, who, Wade LeBlanc. So I talked to you before about how Anthony DeSclafani has had an FIP of 12.9. What I didn't tell you is that that's the second worst for all the pitchers going today. E-Rush, I think that the risk is for the pitchers. I don't think the batters. I think the game's going to finish. I don't think there's any way that even if it gets interrupted with the thunderstorms that are coming through, that it's going to knock the game out, and it's starting early enough that they'll just wait it out. So I wouldn't have played either of the pitchers anyway in that game. So the weather is largely going to be irrelevant there. Just don't play Brault or DeSclafani at all. So yeah, like I said, DeSclafani is a FIP of 12.9 over the last couple weeks. He is the second worst pitching today, all day, not just on this slate. The worst pitcher pitching today recently is Wade LeBlanc, who's had an ERA of 13.5 and an FIP of 13.34. He's walking 3.7 per 9, 2.05 whip, and he's not getting lucky. It's not like he's getting unlucky. Like, his BABIP against is 286. What we're seeing is someone who's just been pitching about as bad as someone can pitch. Now, I know that this is a Texas lineup that profiles a lot worse against lefties, but they did well enough yesterday, and they should be able to chase LeBlanc relatively early. Them getting Andrus back, is a pretty huge deal, and Pence has been their absolute savior, especially against lefties over the last few weeks. I'm sorry, guys, the pain is really getting to me. So yeah, on the early slate, Wade LeBlanc, don't consider him either. I don't care how cheap he is. It's just not going to be worth it. I would again take Rangers bats. I think that they are the highest priced stack on the slate, and I think because of that they're going to go completely underowned because again there's not a lot of cheap pitching options. So if you can sneak in, an Andrus as a one-off for 4,800 or a Pence for 5,300, I wouldn't mind that at all. Forsythe and Cabrera have been doing well enough, 4,200 and 3,700. And then Guzman yesterday had a really nice lefty-on-lefty home run. He's normally not someone that profiles as hitting well against lefties at all, but if he's heating up in that 8-hole for 3,500 or 2,600 on FanDuel, and the first base slot, you're going to do okay for yourself. Wade LeBlanc really is that bad, and they should have enough at bats against the bullpen that it shouldn't be that much of a concern to you, especially on a 4-game slate. So I don't think we have any questions on there. So let's look at the Cleveland-Boston game about as quick as can be, because that's just going to be a quick showdown. If I am playing this game on a showdown, my captain is going to be Shane Bieber. Over the last couple weeks, a 16 strikeouts per 9, 0.93 whip. His batting average from balls in play, his BABIP against is 360. So he has been unlucky in terms of batted balls in play. And his ERA is 0.64, FIP 0.4. So that should tell you everything. With a strikeouts per 9 of 16. I know this is a Red Sox team that doesn't strike out, and they have a bunch of hot hitters. But there's no one else on this slate that's going to, or the showdown slate, that's going to have the upside that Bieber has, unfortunately, for everybody. So if you're playing all day, or FanDuel has the 6 o'clock game in there, I don't really know how it works on other sites a lot of the time, but Bieber should be the overall top pitcher of the day across any slate, any game, period, especially for the price. If you're playing the all-day slate on either of the sites, he's only 10,100 on DraftKings and 9,600 on FanDuel, which is absolutely ludicrous given his recent form. So yeah, I am going to focus on getting Bieber, and then Ryan Weber had a really good last start, but I think that was more of a fluke. You can see he got lucky from all the advanced stats. He didn't strike out enough people. 5 strikeouts per 9, if you average it out. And like I've said, when you see the 2 ERA for the early slate, Chris, or overall, a 2 ERA with a 4.12 FIP, 4.4 xFIP. Ryan Weber has not been pitching that well. So when you combine that with an Indians team, yeah, no problem, Chris. Let me go back and do that in a second. After I'm done with this showdown, I'll go back and give a quick summary of the early slate. I didn't do that. I'm in really bad. The pain today is my brain is not doing good. So I'm trying my best to work through it. But if I do forget something like that, you do not have to apologize. I am here to answer your questions, my friend. Please never, ever apologize for asking me to go back or asking me to do something. It is absolutely my pleasure. That is why I am here doing this. I'm not doing this, as an exercise in learning how to publicly speak. I'm not doing this for funsies. I'm doing this because I want to provide a service to people. I'm fighting through this today, through the pain, because I want to be able to do this for people and give, the advice that I think I can provide that other people don't. Which, again, it doesn't mean that I'm the only one that's going to say it, but I think I give pieces of the puzzle that other people don't, that you can, build the whole thing with. So I try to make sure, as much as I can, I get out there. So let me just, get to this really quickly. I'm not a big fan of taking Weber. If you look at the Red Sox bats, they have a few really, really hot hitters right now, the 2 hottest of which are Devers and JD Martinez. So what I am going to do if I play that showdown is I'm going to take Bieber as my captain. I'm going to try to take one of Martinez or Devers from Boston. And then if you look at the Indians bats, none of them are hot and none of them are cold, which is absolutely amazing. It's very hard for an entire team to do that. So I'm basically just going to fill in from the top with the cheapest guys I can. So Mercado, who's been batting second, he's been hitting really, really well lately. I have no problem locking him in as one of the first. Kipnis, who got moved down to the cleanup slot, even though he hasn't been doing that well lately, is way too cheap for a cleanup hitter. $3,700 for the all-day slate, which means he's going to be significantly cheaper than everybody else on the showdown. So basically, again, my strategy is Shane Bieber, and then either Martinez and or Devers. If you can do both, great. I'd try to get Oscar Mercado, maybe Kipnis, but fill it in with more Indians bats. They got to the Red Sox bullpen yesterday, and I think they're going to be riding high from that, as much as I don't believe in the narrative thing. So let me go back and summarize the early slate for you. My favorite stack running away is going to be the Cincinnati Reds against Brault. My second favorite stack is going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates against DeSclafani. My third favorite stack is going to be the Mariners against Drew Smiley. And my fourth favorite stack is going to be the Texas Rangers against Wade LeBlanc. I know LeBlanc has been pitching badly, but again, Rangers against a lefty does give them enough of a downgrade that I would rather take the lineups with the hottest bats. So namely Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, or Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and then Seattle in that order. I also think that taking contrarian Padres or Yankees stack, like if you're going contrarian GPP, I'm looking at Padres Yankees. I think the Reds are going to be one of the more popular stacks, although there's a good reason for that. They should be. I think that the Padres and the Yankees are going to be relatively underowned, given the upside that both have. So if you're going GPP, that's where I'm going to go. And then pitching rank, Paddock and Canning are the absolute two pitchers that I want to play. And I really don't want to play anybody else, as much as that sucks. Everybody else is either going to be limited too much. God, it hurts so much. Everyone is going to either be limited pitch-wise too much, like Paxton, or they're going to be in too bad a situation and have been pitching really badly lately. I mean, those four guys for Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Texas, and Seattle have been pitching absolutely abysmally. Four of the worst pitchers in the last couple of weeks in the game. So it's going to be four of those stacks if you can afford it, and try to stay away from those pitchers if you can. And again, the GPP play here is going to be Mengden. Mengden, if Trout is out, becomes an instant GPP play. But again, we're going to have to wait for probably another hour and a half. I would assume that the lineup, since they are waiting for Trout news and he has to warm up and see how he feels, I would assume that the Angels lineup doesn't come out before the game's lock at 12:35 or what have you. That game locks at 12:35. But it's something that we're going to have to pay attention to. All right. Let's move to the night slate and let's get through that. So the Phillies have Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola, if you look at just this slate, Aaron Nola has been the best pitcher out of all of the pitchers on this slate. 14.3 strikeouts per nine. The 4 walks per nine is concerning, as is the 1.5 whip. But we see that he's one of the guys who's been getting unlucky with BABIP. 462, which is astronomical. So you can see that with the fact that his ERA is 3.18, but his FIP is only 1.26 with a 2.27 xFIP. So while the Cardinals are a decent team that don't strike out that much, I think that, as I've talked about, Nola is a fantastic pitcher who was in bad form at the beginning of the year. I would expect him to regain that form quicker than not, because there's nothing that he's been doing that indicates why he's been struggling. So I expect him to get back to it, and I would absolutely love playing him against the Cardinals today. He is an ace. He should be priced over 10,000, and he's 9,000 on DraftKings and 8,900 on FanDuel. Granted, I know he's been up and down. I know the Cardinals aren't the best matchup in the world, but if we look at it, they only have one hot batter in their lineup, Matt Carpenter. We have DeYoung, Martinez, and Wong, who have all been really, really cold. And everybody else, Fowler's closer to hot, but everybody else is in the middle or closer to cold as well. So I think that Nola is going to be one of the best pitchers on the late slate, especially considering price. On the Cardinals side, we have Genesis Cabrera, who's going to be making his big league debut. He has gotten 7 starts so far in AAA, and this is where the problem starts. He has a 8.8 strikeouts per 9, which is not bad. Not great. We want over 9, but not bad. He's close enough to 9. But his walks per 9 are 4.3, and that's indicative of his entire minor league career. The ERA 6.35 with an FIP of 6.85 and an XFIP of 6.35. And that just shows you that even in the minors, he's getting shelled. I've talked about it in the past that when you move from the minors to the majors, you see your strikeouts per 9 go down and your walks per 9 go up. So we're going to see him walk a ton of people and not strike out a lot of people, going against a Phillies offense that's been pretty cold, but has enough good bats in it that, while I'm not going to go yeehaw full stack them today, I really wouldn't mind taking Andrew McCutchen, who's been on fire lately, a ditto Rhys Hoskins. You should note that Cabrera is a lefty. So McCutchen with those extreme normal splits, batting leadoff, hot as anything lately, would be one of my favorite one-offs. On top of that, we have a Vegas total of 10.5 with the Phillies supposed to get 6 runs. Here's the one thing that we need to talk about, though, the weather. The Mid-Atlantic is going to get completely hammered today. Yesterday, if you were following me at all, you saw that I was doing a new type of article where, after I talk about the video, all of the lineups that come out, I still want to be able to talk to you about how my thoughts have changed on the pitchers or the lineups based on any changes from what the projected lineup was to what the official lineup was, or is, I should say. So yesterday, in the midst of doing that, we got a hailstorm with, I would say, hail that big or so. It was absolutely amazing. It's the second or third time in my life I've seen hail. And like I said, I'm obsessed with weather. I used to stand outside every time a thunderstorm came through my area. While I can't stand now, I have a walker in my garage that has a seat on it, that I can sit on it and watch it. But it knocked the power out completely for hours and hours. And we're going to have a flare-up of the same storms today. And they're going to be really, really severe. And they're going to be hammering the Mid-Atlantic in the early evening hours. So the main problem I have here is, while I love Nola, independent of all of those external conditions, I have a really sneaking suspicion that this game is going to get an in-game delay. If not, they're going to start it and then it's going to be postponed. I apologize for the beeping. I'm getting messages from Kyle. We're working through some math stuff. So always trying to improve our stuff, especially, for the paid members. The projections, I take more pride in the projections than almost anything else. So yeah, the Phillies game is probably with Baltimore. They're delaying it. That makes sense because the rain's going to clear out and they're going to have like a 3 or 4 hour gap. But I still thought that it should have been cleared out by then. Maybe they're just trying to get the field up to date. Let me look. Let me double check here. I'm gonna go back and look at the weather again, because like I said before I came on, I was looking at the radar, and from what it looked like, the rain should have been out of the Cincinnati area by around 12:30. So I don't know if they're calling it or trying to get the field dry. Like maybe it's not going to stop early enough for them to dry the field, so they're going to need to take that time to do it. I know there's a giant line of storms going through. Where the hell is Cincinnati? Zoom out. There it is. Okay. I'm close enough that I just zoom over from where I am. Okay, so we have, oh, there's a bump in it. It went north. Okay. It surprisingly went a little bit north. So let's look here. So yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. From what it looks like now, the rain is going to clear out of Cincinnati by about 1 o'clock. And then they're going to have about 2 or 3 completely clear hours. There's a chance of thunderstorms flaring up that'll pass by them, and then it'll be clear again. So they should be able to get this game in. They might delay it for like a half hour, slightly more than that, to clear up the field. And then they should have the window to play a full game, if not have a slight delay there. But like I said, if you're taking the batters here, I don't think you're going to have much risk. So I would have absolutely no problem locking them in cash or whatever. And like I said, I really, really love the Reds. So sorry to get sidetracked there, but that is significant news. Thank you for letting us know, Chris. I really do appreciate it. I am confident that they're going to be able to start playing this game around 1 o'clock, and then they shouldn't have any problem getting the whole thing in. But again, don't play the pitchers in that game. Don't play the pitchers in that game. Oh, that one hurt. I should have done that. So again, the rain in Philly is going to be a huge concern. The Mid-Atlantic is going to get hit really, really hard. Philly is going to be, that southern edge of Pennsylvania, northern edge of Maryland is where most of the activity is going to be. I mean, you could just move Cincinnati over. That's basically what's happening. Unfortunately, that also puts Baltimore in the trigger hair, the crosshair. That's it. So while I would have basically tried to stay away from this game anyway, Carpenter and Means are bad pitchers. It's just, I can understand taking some one-offs here, but everyone's priced reasonably. The Baltimore Orioles, they have a bunch of them near 5,000. They've been priced up for the Rockies and for their recent form, and they just need to get knocked back down to normal pricing because they're the Orioles. So yeah, this is a game that I would have pretty much stayed away from anyway. But now with the weather concerns, even more so. But again, if you want to take bats, just like Philadelphia, I'm not taking any pitchers from this game. So Nola's the only one who's really going to be affected. And unfortunately, like I said, he was my favorite play. So the effect there is going to be significant. But if you are thinking of taking, a Detroit Tigers stack or a one-off, Dixon has been really, really good lately. 4,400 on DK, but only 2,700 on FanDuel is pretty significant. So 4,400 righty on lefty. I have no problem taking a one-off from some of these guys. I think that it really is going to be safe for the bats. Just be worried about pitching if you plan on pitching anyone in either of those two games. I'll get there, DJ. There's a few. My favorite starting pitcher minus Nola is coming up in the next game, which is the Toronto and Tampa Bay game. Blake Snell is the reigning Cy Young winner for a reason. This is a Blue Jays team that is decent at best, right? Like they're not lighting the world on fire. So we have Sogard if he plays, which I don't have him playing right now. Sogard if he plays is a lefty that doesn't do well against lefties. Freddie Galvis leading off is not someone that worries me. Vladdy Guerrero hasn't seen Blake Snell. So while he might be able to get some hits on him later on, I would be worried about Vladdy Guerrero or any batter getting their first chance against the amazing. I mean, the stuff that Blake Snell has is fantastic. You can see people swinging at fastballs, 5 feet off the plate up and away because they think that it's a curveball that's going to break. His stuff is incredible. So having seen it before is actually a big boost with someone like Snell. Then you have Smoke, who's a switch hitter, but bats much better as a lefty, which means he's going to be on his weak side. That's not good. Tellez is a lefty that doesn't hit lefties well, and he should be playing today. That's really bad for him. Grichuk has been cold, so that's bad. Gurriel, love Gurriel, but that's it. Cavan Biggio, or Cavan. I actually don't know how to say that. I've never heard someone say his first name. Biggio's kid, Lil Biggio, is a lefty. And again, much like Vladdy, he hasn't seen Snell yet. Jonathan Davis hasn't seen Snell, and he's terrible. And Danny Jensen's even worse than that. So Snell has a terrible lineup that is very ill-suited for the kind of pitcher he is. While 11K is generally, a range where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to go over there. It kind of hamstrings you. I don't mind the 10 to 11K range, but Blake Snell is worth it at 11.3. I have no problem going there tonight. He really should be one of the best pitchers here running away. If you look at recent form as well, 11.4 strikeouts per 9, 1.42 ERA with a 2.56 whip, 2.56 FIP, 2.74 xFIP, 3.25 Sierra. So he's climbing very small stairs, enough that I have no problem. He's not giving up home runs. It's just everything lines up for Blake Snell being the best overall pitcher on the slate tonight. There's a couple others that I really do like a lot, but we'll get there, as we get there. On the other side, we have Trent Thornton, who I recommend from time to time. He's a dude that has some good strikeout upside. He's been pitching decently, not great, but decently over the last recent stretch of time. But this is a Tampa Bay Rays team that I don't like targeting pitchers against, period. I don't think he's going to have the strikeout upside against Tampa Bay. Meadows has been on fire. Pham has been on fire. Garcia's been hitting well. Kiermaier's been hot lately. Darno's been hitting much better. They don't have a single batter in the projected Rays lineup that I would have as cold. So Trent Thornton, while I can understand the upside, and while if I was playing 150 lineups, I would have some exposure to him, is not someone that if I'm playing, even 20 lineups, I don't know if I'm going to have, more than one Trent Thornton there. Blake Snell, though, absolutely love. Austin Meadows and Pham, absolutely love if you can get them as a mini stack. And then Lourdes Gurriel, if you're not playing Snell, really like Lourdes Gurriel. He has come back up with a purpose, and he let me give you the exact stats because it's just he's been getting better and better. If you look at, I do the hot and cold every day, and I do it all by hand. None of this stuff is automated. Well, the pricing and the positioning just got automated last night. But until then, every single thing that you've seen, I've done painstakingly by hand to make sure that it's correct. So Gurriel has been getting better and better over the last week. 471 batting average, 1.176 slugging, an OPS of 1.676 with an ISO of 706 and a WOBA of 669. His weighted runs created plus is 336, and he has a weighted runs created for the week of 8. That is astronomical for a week. Astronomical for a week. So while, taking anybody against Snell is going to be risky business, everyone's going to feel that way. Gurriel has been hitting like an all-star, and he is 3,400 on DK with dual position eligibility and only 2,700 on FanDuel. So while I'm not as gung-ho as it might sound, that was worded badly, and I don't know how to say it. While it's not like a lock for me to get it's not a lock for me to get Gurriel in there, I do think that he is a really, really sneaky one-off if you're not playing Snell. Next up is the Giants and the Marlins. We have Mad Bum going against Pablo Lopez. Again, neither of these pitchers have been doing that great. Mad Bum under 9 strikeouts per 9. ERA, FIP, XFIP all around the 4.4 range. WHIP at 1.3, giving up 1.5 home runs per 9. I know this is a Marlins team that has hit less home runs than anybody in the major leagues, but that still shows that he's giving up hard contact. It's not just an indicator of home runs. It's an indicator of he's giving up hard contact. And you can get that if you look at stats the right way. Pablo Lopez, even worse, 6.8 strikeouts per 9. And then his ERA, while 3.38, his FIP is almost 5. So he's also someone who's been pitching poorly and been getting lucky. These are the two worst offenses in baseball. I don't think I'm wrong there. I'm going to avoid this game. Bumgardner is just too expensive for the limited upside he's shown recently, even against the Marlins. Garrett Cooper's been hot. Harold Ramirez has been hot. Brian Anderson's been doing really well lately. I would just rather take a Cooper, Anderson, Harold Ramirez mini stack against Bumgardner, and that'll help you fit in whoever else you want because they are cheap. They have been producing, and no one else is going to be on them. Bumgardners should be overly popular as pitchers against the Marlins rightfully are. I call them the free square for a reason, and it's not because they're a good team, but every once in a while, a group of batters get hot, and they're going against a pitcher that's been performing poorly. So I think Bumgardner is going to be over-owned for the situation, and I would rather have a couple of those Marlins bats that have been hot lately. On the other side, again, Pablo Lopez is someone you could take a chance on because of the price. 6,600 on DraftKings. Normally, DraftKings is a little more expensive than FanDuel, depending. But the fact that he's 6,600 on DraftKings and 7,600 on FanDuel means that either FanDuel is really overpricing him or DraftKings is really underpricing him. Looking again at the advanced stats, the fact that he hasn't been cold lately, he's been decent, not great. And this is, again, an awful Giants team. Not one batter on the Giants is hot. I think that Pablo Lopez at 6,600 is a decent GPP play, but not someone, again, that I'm super gung-ho about. But for the price, again, you could do a lot worse. Next up, we have the Nats and the Braves. Anibal Sanchez is coming off the IL to start, so we can get rid of him. He should be limited, and coming off the IL for a bad pitcher is something I'm not going to consider. What it does mean, though, is the Braves are going to be one of, if not my favorite stack on the day. I would already want to stack against Anibal Sanchez. I would already want to get bats against the Nats. The Nats have the worst bullpen in baseball, and that is backed up by basically every single stat that you look at, advanced or not, their ERA and to everything. The Nationals are the worst, to the point where you can take bats against them even when like a Strasburg or a Scherzer's pitching, knowing that unless they throw a complete game, those bats have a good chance of putting up some runs later in. So we have Sanchez who's going to be limited and then giving way to a bullpen that is as bad as it gets. Give me all the Braves bats. Acuna has been as cold as ice lately, so you can separate from the field by fading him, but this is as good a get-right spot as any, and no one can doubt his talent. The two hottest bats for the Braves are Swanson and Riley, so I would want to focus on getting them in, and then Freeman also has been fantastic. Markakis is heating up. So I would definitely have no problem taking those four and building around there with any of the other bats that you may want to take. So yeah, Atlanta against Anibal Sanchez and the corpse of the Washington Nationals bullpen is probably going to be my favorite stack when all is said and done, but I'll put together that list later on. On the other side, we have Kevin Gausman going, and he's one of those pitchers, again, like mediocre over the last couple weeks. 7.5 strikeouts per 9, meh. 1.17 whip, meh. He hasn't given up a home run, which is nice. But we can see, the 3.75 ERA with a 2.7 FIP, but then his xFIP is 5. So he's someone that's been all over the board lately. This is a Nationals team that has been hitting well. None of the hitters on the Nats are cold. Eaton, Soto, and Kendrick have been on fire lately. The temps are going to be in the 90s, which means the ball's going to be flying. So while Gaussman hasn't given up a home run, he's been really good with keeping the ball on the ground. The Nats bats are also some of my favorite bats today. I would rather take the Braves than the Nats, given the pricing, the similar pricing, but Eaton at 4,000 batting second is going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. Only 3,100 on FanDuel. That is just way too much value there for the one-off. But yeah, Braves and Nats are going to be running away, two of my favorite stacks today. Next up is the Cubs and the Astros. We have Kyle Hendricks against Wade Miley. Kyle Hendricks has been pitching really well lately. For 9,200, I would rather go. Well, if the rain holds up, I'd rather go 9,000 for Nola. But if you play Nola and then you need a quick pivot, save $200 and do yourself a favor and use Kyle Hendricks. I know he's normally one of those ground ball pitchers that doesn't have the strikeout upside, but over the last couple weeks, he's been finding that strikeout stuff. 9.2 strikeouts per nine. Which is a lot better than he normally gets. His whip under 1, 3.66 ERA, 3.83 FIP, 3.78 xFIP. So again, consistent across the board. This is an Astros team that just doesn't look the same without Altuve and Springer. Granted, I don't think anyone's saying that Bregman is bad or Brantley is bad or Correa is not a good hitter, but they lose a lot of depth. When a cold Josh Reddick is leading off and Tony Kemp is playing second base and Jack Mayfield is getting a significant number of at-bats. Gurriel hasn't been hitting well. Chirinos probably isn't going to play today, but we'll see. It might be his day to rest. I have him in, but again, we're going to see. So while people are generally scared off by the Astros, Hendricks is in a better spot than people realize because the Astros aren't the Astros without Springer and Altuve. On the other side, the Cubs are a good lineup against lefties, worse without Bryant in, but they still have enough bats that I am more a fan of taking the Cubs than taking Miley. He's been, again, one of those pitchers, like most of the pitchers on this slate, decent but not great. K9 around 8 over the last couple weeks. And then ERA and all those advanced things are around 4. So while if this were a weak matchup, I would take him for 7,800 or 6,600 on FanDuel. Against a hot-hitting Cubs team, I'm probably just going to wind up passing. Baez is too good a hitter, batting second for Bryant. Rizzo's been hot, and people underrate him against lefties. Hayward has been hot, and while lefty on lefty for him isn't great, he shows no split, so he's better against lefties than people would think. And then Addison Russell and Bote should be batting 8 and 9. Bote? I think it's Bote. Have been hot as anything lately. So, Wade Miley, not necessarily the best play. I can understand having some exposure there if you're playing a lot of lineups, but for the most part, I'm going to avoid that. Next, we have the Royals and the White Sox. This is a game to avoid the pitching as well. Give me all of the bats here. And granted, I don't really want that many bats here for the pricing. Everybody here is like 5,000, and I would much rather play the Braves or Coors Field bats or something along those lines than the Royals or the White Sox. Granted, Glenn Sparkman is terrible. He doesn't strike people out. Granted, Reynaldo Lopez had one good game where he struck out a ton of people, and since then hasn't done anything. Reynaldo Lopez FIP over the last couple weeks, 9.22 with a 3.72 strikeouts per nine, just to back up what I just said. So Reynaldo Lopez, Glenn Sparkman, both terrible. I can understand wanting to take some stacks here. Obviously the Royals and the White Sox are both in good spots, but I would much rather have some other stacks today. If you're doing the 150 lineups thing, have some exposure to the Royals and the White Sox. Those are both very good stacks. But for someone like me who's probably going to wind up playing one lineup today because I am in too much pain for my eyes to see straight, I would much rather, if I'm spending 5,000 per player, get the Braves in there against Anibal Sanchez and the wreck of a disaster of the Nationals bullpen. So if you are playing players from this game, Hunter Dozier has been hot. Martin Maldonado is so hot that his price went up from $2,200 to $2,900 on DraftKings. And then Tim Anderson on the White Sox is the only batter who's been hot lately. The only player I would avoid batter-wise is Nicky Lopez. They found his holes and they've adjusted to him. So no thank you. 2 more games left, and then I can go lay down. Second to last game, the penultimate game, D-backs and Rockies in Coors Field. Robbie Ray has been great lately, but he's a curveball pitcher going into Coors, hasn't had success in Coors, so absolutely no thanks. I've talked before, lefty going into Coors is about the worst thing that you can have. They are going to give up home runs, period. On top of that, Story and Arenado are both incredibly hot going in here, as is Iannetta. So, while Robbie Ray at 8,200 is someone that you could always consider in GPPs for the upside, 7,500 on FanDuel, the same, though it's tougher to do one pitcher and have it be Robbie Ray in Coors Field. Excuse me. I am much more focused on getting Story, Arenado, and then Iannetta if I can. He's only 3,700, which is cheap for a Coors Field bat. And then Reynolds and Desmond if I can. Reynolds, he should be playing. He's only 3,500 on DraftKings and 3,000 on FanDuel. Desmond is only 3,900 and 3,500 on FanDuel. These are underpriced dudes in a decent enough spot going against a lefty whose curveball is going to be hampered by the high altitude of Denver. So, I would have some exposure to Ray if I was playing 150 lineups. But if I'm building 1 or 2 lineups, I'm going to focus much, much more on the Rockies. Given the pricing, they have cheaper dudes than the Braves. So I would put them right there with the Braves in terms of how much I like the stack. But I would say that the bullpen for the Nats and the 90-degree weather does give the slight advantage for me to the Braves. The Diamondbacks, on the other hand, if you have the money, are the stack of the day. Jeff Hoffman is a terrible pitcher who does not belong in the major leagues. He's here because of injury and because the other pitchers they tried to give a chance to did really, really bad. So this is a D-backs team that's hot hitting. Dyson 5,800 is a lot. And he's been okay, but Marte has been on fire. Escobar's been on fire. Nick Ahmed has been on fire. And you're going to have to spend 5,000 per, but you're going to have to spend 5,000 for most of the good stacks today. The Braves, the Nats, the Rockies, basically the Royals or the White Sox, if you want to even go there. If you're playing any of the decent stacks today, you're going to wind up paying something. Even against good pitchers, as we'll see in the next game. Good pitchers pitching poorly, but regardless, this is one where, I since the last game is the Mets Dodgers, I can sum up the stacks today very, very easily. The Diamondbacks, if you have the money, the Diamondbacks are the best stack of the day. Give me them all day against Jeff Hoffman. The Braves would be my second favorite stack of the day. The Rockies would be my third favorite stack of the day. The Nats would be my fourth favorite stack of the day. It's really not that close. I would say that if you're playing anything else, I really do like Tampa Bay against Thornton, but I would consider that more of a GPP play. And then I talked to you about getting some Phillies if the rain holds off. But again, I'm really worried that game, even if they try to play it, it just gets stopped. So, okay, that's the summary of the stacks. Let's move on to the last game, and then I could do summary of pitching. We have the Mets and the Dodgers going off 2 hours, or what is it? Is it 2 hours after the last game? Yeah, an hour and a half after the last game, or after the second to last game. So we're going to have some waiting to do. We might, on how this works, we might have to wait till after lock. So right now, there is not a cold hitter in any of these lineups. We have Conforto, Wilson Ramos, Carlos Gomez, Adeiny Echeverria, who are all hot for the Mets, which again means Woba over 400, OPS around 1,000 or more. And then on the Dodgers, we have Peterson, Turner, and Bellinger, all of whom are hot lately, and their pitcher, Walker Buehler, who's been one of the best pitchers. If you look at this slate, the second best pitcher on this slate, going by the numbers, 9.8 strikeouts per nine, 0.75 walks per nine, 1.50 ERA, 2.28 FIP, 2.95 xFIP, 3.22 Sierra. So he's climbing the stairs like Snell, but very small stairs, not ones that we're going to need to concern ourselves with. So, I like Buehler. He is dramatically underpriced on DraftKings. So just again to show you, let's go to like Snell again. So Snell on DraftKings is 11,300, and on FanDuel he's 11,800. Walker Buehler on DraftKings is 9,600, and on FanDuel is 11,000. He's been pitching more like the 11,000 pitcher than a 9,600 pitcher. So Buehler's awesome today. The Mets have been hitting well, but a lot of the damage that they've been doing has been coming against bullpens. So I would expect that Buehler to have more than a successful turn on the rubber tonight. And then on the other side, Syndergaard, I'm a big fan of Syndergaard. If you read my MLB previews, Syndergaard was my pick for the Cy Young for the NL, which I regret to inform you is almost certainly not going to happen unless he has like a Jake Arrieta second half of 2019. But he's still a decent pitcher with decent strikeout upside. He just hasn't been doing that lately. So I am going to avoid Syndergaard for the 9,300, the 9,100. I think that Bazam, which tip? I'll let you know if that's a good bet. Might be. You can do like that dude on Jeopardy. Thor. Yeah. Thor has been mediocre. So what I've said, or I said this earlier, like the Yankees, the Dodgers are a team that you can always play in a GPP against any pitcher. Even if Thor has a really good 7 innings, this is a Mets bullpen that that 8th inning is going to be tough. They could give up 10 runs in the 8th before they get it to Diaz. So while there are better stacks, if you're going deep GPP, no one's going to be on the Dodgers. And Bellinger has shown he can hit a home run every day off anybody, and no one's going to pay $5,900 for him for that. So in summary, okay game for Syndergaard, but I'd rather have the bats. He's too expensive for his recent form. Fantastic spot for Buehler. If you want to take some Mets one-offs instead, because I expect Buehler to be super popular, I can understand that as well. But give me Buehler. So let's go through I went through the stack summary. So let's look at the pitchers. Again, conditionally, Nola is my favorite pitcher on the board. I don't think that game plays. Even if it plays, I don't expect them to play it through. So I don't think he's going to get a full game in. I honestly don't. I have no reason to think that's going to happen. So unless there's some kind of crazy news or something, I'm going to want to play Nola, but I'm not going to be able to get there. Now, considering price, my second favorite pitcher of the day on DraftKings is going to be Walker Buehler. So because of the pricing disparity between Buehler on DraftKings and FanDuel, my 1-2 is Buehler and Snell. But Buehler and then Snell on DraftKings because of the pricing, and then Snell and then Buehler on FanDuel. I would rather pay the extra $800 for Snell on FanDuel and have him than pay an extra $1,700 for Snell on DraftKings when that is almost an entire bat. That's like a Jack Mayfield yesterday is almost $1,700. So again, on DraftKings, it's Buehler and then Snell. Given the pricing on FanDuel, it's Snell and then Buehler. My third favorite pitcher is going to be Kyle Hendricks. I think that he is going to go relatively unowned today, but this is not the Astros team that we really need to worry about at all. So, well, I'm sorry, that's my brain with the medicine. I catch it after I say things. That is absolutely wrong. Ignore that. This is not an Astros team we don't need to worry about at all. This is an Astros team we need to worry about less without Springer and Altuve in the lineup. So while they still have fantastic bats like Bregman and Correa and Brantley, they are much, much weaker now, and Kendricks has been showing some of that strikeout upside. So I would take him third, but the gap between 1, 2, and 3 is absolutely significant. This small slate is going to be Pablo Lopez, and that's one of like a GPP price play. If he was priced at 8,000, like he should be, take him. But this is a really bad Giants team. They hit the second least home runs in Major League Baseball, right above the Marlins. So at 6,600, I am going to take a chance with the Giants only having a 3.6 run total that he'll be able to get me the 18 to 20 points that I would need for him to get 3x and really pay off that salary. And then if we're going into pitchers, I would consider like in GPPs or if you're doing like multiple lineups. I would play Thornton. I would have some exposure to him, although again, that's only for strikeout upside. The Rays are a dangerous offense, and they're like my fifth favorite stack if I remember that order correctly. Bumgarner, a little too expensive, but it's the Marlins. They are the free stack for a reason. And then Syndergaard would be the third one that again you can hope that he has one of his like complete game shutout 4 days, but I would guess that he doesn't. So that's that. My home run call of the day. My home run call of the day is going to be Freddie Freeman. But I would think that Freddie Freeman, Austin Riley, Nolan Arenado, Marte, I think all those guys are going to hit home runs at least. I would also take the over on Meadows hitting a home run today. But that would be it. Those are the guys that I think would have the best chances. If you guys want, I'm going to look real quickly here because I want to say, like, who's the cheapest dude that I think is the most likely dude to hit a home run? Because that's always a fun thing to do. Oops, what's wrong? It's the rain game, so it doesn't. Yeah, people that I would want to hit like Brandon Dixon. I'd love Brandon Dixon tonight, but I don't think with the rain games it's going to work. So yeah, that's about it for today. I have to go lay down. Thank you all for joining me. I'm sorry that I don't have the normal enthusiasm in my voice, but like I said, it's been a really bad day. I'm doing my best to get through it, and I just appreciate you all bearing with me. So since there are no questions, I'm going to take off and go try to take care of the pain. Thank you all very much. I love you all. I really do appreciate it. It means the world to me that you all join me to do this every day. I can't wait until we get like 50 people every day and 100 people every day. I know it's months and months from now, but that would be so cool. I can't wait. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you so much.